Original Kansas guitarist Rich Williams talks about the hardest part of being in Kansas and, of course, the best part. It's our series with four separate members of Kansas on Rock History Music. The band Kansas was formed in Topeka, Kansas in 1973. They're a quintessential American rock band known for their progressive rock sound and intricate compositions. The original lineup included Kerry Livgren, Steve Walsh, Phil Ehart, Rich Williams, Robbie Steinhardt, and David Hope. Their breakthrough came in 1976 with the album Leftoverture, featuring the hit single Carry On Wayward Son. You couldn't grow up in the 70s without hearing that tune. The follow-up, Point of No Return, including the timeless classic Dust in the Wind. Kansas is celebrated for their complex arrangements and powerful lyrics, blending rock and classical influences. Over decades, they've maintained a dedicated fan base and a major influence on the rock music landscape. What got him back in the band? Why did he come back?
Well, he went off. Well, there's always the notion that I can do this. I can be a rocker. And these guys are holding me back. And so he went off to be, a rock star. And he put together a really good band with Mike Slammer and Billy Greer, Tim Garrett, who was a friend from Topeka. And tried, with a couple albums to do that and went broke. It never really caught on. Meanwhile, Phil and I were told by the record company, we were owed like 4 records. And we had a meeting at the Hotel California with the big wig, and he just sat down and said, guys, give it up. You're done. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Your management doesn't care. Booking agents don't care. You have no fans, all this, And so we walked out of there with our asses handed to us. We didn't quit. We didn't give up, but we didn't have a team to put on the field either.
Right.
Steve was in streets, Kerry and Dave were gone. So we just kind of kept that under our hat and we just waited. Well, streets eventually died. And meanwhile, Steve Morse, 3 times in the Guitar Player Hall of Fame and a legend, we were based out of Georgia. Steve was based out of Macon, just outside of Atlanta. And, he was a peer. He was part of the local music scene. And Phil just said, let's maybe try to get this started again. And so Phil approached Steve. What would you think about it? And Steve didn't have anything else to do. Sure, let's give it another shot, because his nemesis was Kerry, and Kerry wasn't around anymore because Steve didn't want to sing Kerry's songs anymore. Meanwhile, Dave Hope could have left with him. We need a bass player. Steve goes, well, Billy Greer, he's a great singer. He's with Streets. He's going to be looking for work. So cool, Billy's in. And then, let's talk to Steve Morris. He's a fan. And the Dregs have broken up. And boom, we had a band. And so like that, suddenly we were back with a working unit. And all of a sudden we're with the new record company, with MCA. And Kansas is now back. Unfortunately, MCA, things weren't going well for that company. And finally they had their Bloody Friday where they just slashed everything. And we died with it. And that was the end of that, because Steve Morse went on to Deep Purple. Mm-hmm. And we had to reinvent ourselves again. Then come the 90s, when classic rock had fallen to its all-time low. And now we're slugging around in a bus, making 15 grand a night, playing little bars, Kansas and Jello Slide. But I can't imagine doing that now, but at the time it was just like, of course we'll continue. Of course we'll keep doing this. I'm waiting for something to change. And Robbie came back. That was with David Ragsdale. Then Ragsdale left, and Robbie came back for a while. Then Robbie had to go, and Ragsdale's back.
What was it like having Robbie back in the band then?
It was good until it wasn't. Robbie loved being in this band. Robbie loved being a rock star. Robbie loved the fans. He loved everything about it all. He just didn't like the work or the practice or the practicing or any of that. He loved every aspect except for that part, which probably the most important part is keeping up your chops and going out and doing that. And that kind of fell away, similar to the first time. Meanwhile, Ragsdale had gone out to Las Vegas because some girl had convinced him he was going to be the Zanfir of violin, playing out in Vegas in a cape or something. And so when we approached David, would you like to get back in? Yes. I mean, we didn't even finish the question. And he wanted back in. And so we had the nucleus for a band again. And so then we started slugging it out, in the bars. And, you talk about paying your dues. We paid our dues already, in the early years of opening for every band out there and being set up on the edge of the stage with your toes hanging off of it and no lights. But now we're paying our dues again. But I guess our tenacity and sticking with it and not listening to the negativity of the record companies and management. So we started managing ourselves and we became masters of our own destiny. And we started slowly crawling out of the hole. And I'll tell you that these last 8 years with us and, Steve retiring and Ronnie Platt coming on board, these have been the most successful, fun, positive years of our entire career. I think a lot of that comes from maturity. Years ago, we're playing Madison Square Garden sold out, probably during Left Overture, I would guess. And we were a lot more, our manager was going crazy in the limousine going to the Garden. Oh, you guys, this is so big. This is so awesome. And then we're going, it was just another day. And we were more concerned about going to Smiler's Deli afterwards to get the shrimp po' boy. In the last years, in my new found understanding of gratitude, these are the best days now. Because I can appreciate it all for what it is now and what it is for today. I can appreciate those days really only in hindsight, because I was young and extremely dumb. And I think it just takes a very mature person or a person to have maturity and gratitude beaten into them a lot of times by their own doing.
That's it right there.
So I gave up and gave in. And this when I saw the wonder of what I get to do. And so these are the best of times for us.
When you were learning the Kansas songs, and again, the audience forgets sometimes when you're learning songs, you can't just go, yeah, I know that one. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all. I mean, things that I had covered, like Even Dust in the Wind, Point of No Return, I thought I was playing it right. But when you study the isolated tracks and do the deep dive, you're realizing how it's really done. And then you hear tribute bands doing it wrong, So it was a lot of transcribing, a lot of going back and forth with Tom, who's the musical director, and him kind of correcting me here and there. And we're still always finding little details to fix,
little nuances.
Yeah, there's a lot of little Easter eggs in that music, little nuances and notes. And so it's fascinating. And also the music is so complex. It's a never ending rabbit hole,
How long did it take you?
I was first I spent 2 weeks writing everything out because nothing was written out. I work that way. I like transcribing things, and that way, if I'm even not with my violin, I can put it into my phone and look at the music and memorize it that way. I was actually doing that, and then just practicing and memorizing song by song over 2 months. So by the time May rolled around, I had a pretty good grasp on the material.
I'm aware of Kansas as a teen.
Well, gosh, when Wayward Son came out, you couldn't not hear it on the radio, and it was just such a powerful song. It grabbed my attention then, and God, I was a huge Kansas fan, a huge Rush fan, Genesis fan, Yes fan. I really was gravitated towards the prog rockers, but here's where I'm going to default a little bit.
Okay.
I really fell in love also with the bands that had great singers. And I remember working at Q's Pizza, my first car, a Mercury Montego. I had a cassette of Journey Evolution, and I played the heck out of that album. And just, between Steve Walsh and Steve Perry, Lou Graham of Foreigner, Brad Delp of Boston. I mean, these guys, they all were my heroes, and guys that I tried to emulate. And just from listening to all those guys and, taking a piece from here, a piece from there, I developed my own voice, and I'm lucky that I gravitated towards guys that have my physical makeup, because I've always said, hey, I love AC/DC, but if I sing AC/DC for 2 songs, I'm done for the night. That's not my physical makeup. So to have my physical makeup be in line with what I love, that music, that Kansas, that Boston, that Journey, and my cover bands played a lot of Styx, it just worked out good for me and developed my voice over the years. And my mindset, even back being a teenager, I always had the mindset is I want to be better than my last show. And I kind of developed that work ethic when it comes to my voice. God knows I didn't have it in other areas, but when it came to singing, there was something subconsciously in me that I took it very, very seriously. And listening to Steve Walsh and listening to Steve Perry, it's like I just zeroed in on them. I mean, I listened to their breathing, and it taught me how to sing, even outside of being in, choirs and having a high school music teacher, Mr. Smalley, who was a great singer, who helped develop my singing. Everything fell into place.
You named him. Thank you. I know I sometimes have to ask the vocalists that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of folks. There's that thing about honoring the people from your past who sort of helped you get to the bug, which helped you work, which helped you get into that room.
Absolutely. And my 7th and 8th grade music teacher, Miss McQueen, I could close my eyes and picture them. Fred Smalley, my music teacher in high school, big, robust guy, real strong voice, and, taught me how to do triads on the piano and work my voice up and down. Stuff that has stuck with me my entire life.
Daryl Sturmer, who's the touring guitarist for Genesis, and Phil Collins, I asked him many moons ago. He's one of the few musicians I got to know. And he said, I was the only one who knew the songs. I said, what? He says, yeah, a lot of them kind of knew parts and stuff. But speaking of that, what Kansas song did you know without, if not knowing you were going to join Kansas, what song did you know, like right off the bat, you just knew before that?
I can't honestly say that any of them were in the buffer ready to rock, but I could say that I would know the forms of the big ones: Point of No Return, Carry On Wayward Son, Dust in the Wind. Those I could play in my mind and know a lot of it. But I didn't want to take anything for granted. Even with those songs, I wanted to really do a deep dive. And on a technical standpoint, it's easier to do that now than it was 20 years ago when I had to learn all the Yes music for the symphonic tour. Because back in 2001, I had a CD or CDs, and that was that. And I played in quick pause and then figure the part out. And if you were to slow anything down with a tape recorder, it would move the pitch of the music down, and that would throw me off a little bit. So nowadays, digital technology, there are all these applications that allow you to slow the music down without changing the pitch, or vice versa, and also use some audio algorithms to kind of attempt to isolate certain instruments. That's difficult to do because it's a stereo mix. It's a left and right. Those are your two channels. But I was able to use some software to isolate certain bands of the stereo field. I don't know if that's a little oddball to say. But then I would hear in a song like Paradox, there's this wild clavinet part going on. And for those who don't know what that is, that's the Stevie Wonder Superstition keyboard, mostly associated with funk, but a lot of rock bands like Kansas and Foreigner, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, they use the clavinet too. And it can feed back like a guitar. It's got strings in it. And it's just such a great instrument, one of my favorites. And so I was so blown away. I was like, oh, there's great clavinet in this. And so I'm trying to learn how to play the clavinet and also hit all the other marks at the same time. And there were moments when we were first playing together when Richard and Phil would look back at me and they'd look at each other and they'd clap like, oh yeah, you remember that thing? You know, because it's sort of hard to hear on the surface. And so over the years, it was just sort of left behind, like just a little details here and there. And I wanted to approach it like I was a person in the audience who just really loved Kansas music. And I want to be like, oh yeah, there's that thing that I haven't heard in years. And so that's why we did Song for America. And I was like, what do you think about bringing the piano break back? Of course, giving myself more work to do and more responsibilities. But they're like, all right, we'll film yourself doing it and show us, and we'll make a decision after that. So I made a video, and they said, all right, it's back in.
Remember, join our Patreon. You get early access to all our videos. If you want to make a donation to the channel, there's a PayPal link. And buy swag. We've got Rocky Street Music t-shirts and caps and coats. Subscribe to our channel, share our videos, like them, and comment on them. I'm John Bowden. This is Rocky Street Music. Take care.